Hello and welcome to another episode of What SHU Doing alongside my illustrious host, Paul Guarino. We are joined by an illustrious guest, Pat. How are you doing?
Hey, Adrian. Hey, Paul. How are you guys?
Good, how are you?
It's been a good day.
Yeah,
it's been
you've been at SHU all day.
I have.
Out.
Yeah, it's been a great day. It's
How many times have you been back? Is this like first time you've been back to see everything or no?
I should come back a lot at this point. Yeah. So the full story with me is just I graduated 07, and then I used to come back. I worked in Fairfield for a bunch of years, and I sort of dropped off for a while, and then I came back in like 2022 for an alumni, a young alumni. I'm not as young as I would hope to be anymore, but and then we started working on this documentary film, History of the Whalers, and I've been coming back a lot more lately. And I honestly, man, I was thinking about it in the car on the way up here. I live in Jersey City, and I'm coming up here to Fairfield, and it's just like it's
crazy.
It's cool. It's a nice feeling to have to come to here. It's like as opposed to going other places. It's like going home to some degree.
Yeah, I get that. I fully get that. Similarly, when I was driving up as well, I was just like, wow, it like it brings back all the memories. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I guess we'll start. Why Sacred Heart? What made you pick Sacred Heart when you did?
It's a wild story, actually. I chose it by accident, frankly.
Really?
Yeah. So the long story. I'll tell the long version. We have all the time, right?
All the time.
When I was a senior in college, high school, I was applying to colleges, and it's wild what parents know. First off, my mom always had Sacred Heart as a school on the list of places I should apply to, and I didn't. It's almost like I begrudgingly out of just like despite her.
Yeah.
And I picked 5 schools in my initial, 2 reaches, 1 that I thought I would get into, and 2 safety schools, and I didn't get into any of them, honestly. So I got rejected by them all. And it was like late March of my senior year of high school, and I was like, I got to go to college next year. So I quickly pivoted, and Sacred Heart was one of the places that I looked at. I went to the campus. The campus was pretty cool. I went to they talked about the laptop program, which I thought was pretty cool. I got offered a scholarship, not a full scholarship, but a small scholarship, which I thought was pretty exciting. And there was a lot here. I didn't really even know what to expect, but it was one of those things that really grew on me as I evolved. Like, we would do info sessions for like the business school, and there was the sports management program, which they were big to promote, which I always wanted the business to fall back on. But then I met Jim Castingway at in an info session, and he talked about coming here from Michigan, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then the studios were not much, but they were something, and I knew that I felt like there was opportunity here. Mm-hmm. And I think it's why it was 2 hours from my house in New Jersey. It was a train ride to New York. It was I came up here to Fairfield, and I really fell in love with the area. Mm-hmm. And it was so I said, yeah, let's give it a shot, see how it goes. And it wasn't always perfect. It didn't always feel perfect when I was here, but in hindsight, where my career has gone, I just did an event on campus, and I couldn't be where I am without this place. I couldn't have done what I've done so far without Sacred Heart, and definitely the Whalers stuff. I wouldn't have, anywhere else in the country, anywhere else in the world. It really wouldn't have been possible for me to sort of take that something was looking out for me in the right spot where Sacred Heart was the choice.
Yeah, wow. So your mom was right.
Yeah, Mom, they're always right, right? My mom's always she forgets that, but I don't.
And then you said you didn't get into any other schools, and Sacred Heart was the only one.
I applied to a few others but the first 5 I got rejected by all of them. I actually got waitlisted by UConn. I think was the only one.
UConn didn't let me in either.
Yeah, but yeah, I just
I threw all my UConn stuff up under my bed once I got rejected.
But yeah, it was like I said, I had to pivot, got into a couple other schools, but Sacred Heart felt right, and so the rest is history.
Yeah. Then tell us a little bit about after graduating Sacred Heart, or actually maybe like internships you had during Sacred Heart.
Yeah, it's funny because I just told the story that I always wanted to be a play-by-play broadcaster, and when I was here, and it was the dream, and it was right as right as like PTI was coming out, and right as Around the Horn was coming out. And it was like,
love those shows.
Yeah, all these columnists and writers were becoming broadcasters, and I was like, okay, so there's a point where I can become a sports writer and then sort of pivot to that stuff. So, the whole story about becoming a sports writer goes back when I was here, of course, because I knew I always wanted to be in sports. I always refer to sports as like a vocation. It's like a calling. That's like it's been my calling all along. And I sort of, again, by accident, took News Writing 1 as a junior, my second semester junior year, and didn't have any idea what it entailed, just as it was elective, and got into it. Was basically writing for the Spectrum. It was, go out and I had a professor who was internship coordinator at the Connecticut Post. So I had done that and did the Connecticut Post, did some stuff there. I actually interned in college and undergrad in the equipment room for the Jets, New York Jets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I did that 2 summers, and it was long and it was arduous. There was a lot of standing around. And I just remember, because I was the equipment manager for the football team when I was here 4 years, and baseball for 3. And I just was like, the media thing always, I knew that I wanted to do it. It was always that it was in. So ever since once I realized I wasn't going to be the Yankee shortstop, it was like one of those moments where I was always going to be in media. Someone just told me, they needed to find a way to get that paycheck in sports, and it was always that way with me. So it was, the writing stuff was really sort of slow. I got an internship at the Connecticut Post, did that for a couple semesters, and I got out of college shortly after college, and I interviewed with a subsidiary paper affiliated to the Post, and I was right before my senior week here. I went down to Fairfield to interview with them, and I didn't get the job, and so I went home and to New Jersey, started working at a small daily paper in New Jersey. And my beats were my fall beat was high school field hockey, and my winter beat was high school fencing. And I talked to my dad, and my dad was like, "You might need to get serious about finding a job." And what happened was the job I got passed over for up here in Fairfield, the sports editor position had been eliminated when I didn't get it. And then they realized they couldn't live without the position. So like 8 months later, they were hiring for it again, and I went in and interviewed and got it. So it's been. And that was the start of it. And honestly, like the ride is wild, because I did that job. I'm supposed to be, I was interviewed, told, do this a year, and then you'll move on to bigger, better things. And I was there 5 years, and I tell people that they're just like 5 years with an entry-level job. It was the economy. Yeah. There was, the recession was real big. The media landscape was shifting drastically back then. Mm-hmm. And it just, it was one of those things where I feel like I could have quit very easily, mm-hmm. but it always was in there that this is what I need to do. This is what I have to do. Mm-hmm. That this career in sports was always had to be there. And so I, evolved a little bit. I got a break where I started writing this book, the Whalers, the book, and networked a little bit. And that's really where the book starts, because my career was dying. It was 5 years an entry-level job in Fairfield, Connecticut. And for as great as Fairfield is, there was a lot of baggage that came with it. There was a lot of parents. There was a lot of, no raises. There was, late nights and early mornings and all hours. And I needed to do more with my life than cover high school sports. Yeah. And my career was my career for 5 years. And so actually, and I tell the story, leverage a Sacred Heart connection. Brad Holland was my sports editor of the Spectrum. His dad is Ken Holland, who's the GM he's now the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. He was the GM of the Detroit Red Wings at the time. And Brad works for him in Edmonton as the front office. And I sent Brad a message. I was like, "Brad, can you get me to talk to your dad? I want to do this book on the Whalers." And Brad was like, "Yeah, he'll call you." And he called me, and it was terrible. The interview with his dad, Ken Holland. Ken played one game for the Whalers in goal. Oh. But it was progress. And then he got me in touch with Mark Howe. And Mark Howe got me in touch with, no one. It died there. But then it's like every time it would come up, it was like, okay, so I'm sort of working on this project about the Whalers. Do you want to talk about it? And I can't even describe how gratifying it is to have every person who you approach about the story be like, yeah, I love my time there. Yeah, I'll talk to you about it. Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool how you just said they got started by you reaching out to another SHU alum, and that's that's the whole like theme of this podcast. That's why it's like crazy.
Yeah.
And then like tell me about like I saw you you worked at MLB and NHL as well.
Yeah, the MLB stuff, it's wild because the MLB stuff was right out of Fairfield. I went there and I was working there like 6 to 2, 4 nights a week, and covering hockey on the side for the New York Times. You want to talk about late nights? You know, I was doing a lot. So like I would do, like I would commute. Man, I can't. Like I think back, I can't even imagine how I did it. Because like I would commute from my parents' house an hour to Harrison, New Jersey, park in Harrison, take the path to New York. Take the path to New York. Walk the 20-minute walk to Chelsea Market, work from 6 to 2, get on the path or get on the subway or walk to the path, take the path to Harrison, hour back, get home 4 a.m, go to bed, wake up at 9 to go cover a morning skate in Newark, or a practice in Newark at, and I only did that for like 6 months, but 6 months is not a short period of time
At all.
But,
and now you can do everything remote.
Yeah, of course. Well, sort of, yeah. But yeah, no, I just, I was 27 or 28, and I was starving to cover this, to do this and make it,
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about the MLB stuff was it gave me some income that I could set, that I was competent. Like I could, it was consistent income, and it was a lot, but it was consistent income. I met some good friends there and keep in touch with some people there. But the Times was always what I wanted to do, and the journalism and the hockey. And so I told the story too earlier that I moved to Jersey City, and it was really easy to work in Jersey City and do. But I mean, it still was late nights and early mornings and morning skates and practices and stuff like that. But I remember covering the Rangers. The Times laid off their full-time hockey writer in 2014, or he took a buyout. And I remember he called me and he was like, "Man, I cannot believe, I'm so grateful. I took a buyout. I get to do." I was like, "What is this guy talking about? He's crazy." But so they started leaning on me and another writer quite a bit because we were freelancers, or we were regular contributors covering the league, covering the NHL, and I started, covering the Rangers. I covered almost, a bunch of Ranger games in 2015. And I remember just being so tired, because of the late nights of the MLB stuff, because of the Rangers. And I got to the end of the season. They played the Capitals in the second round, and there was a 7-game, or the Capitals went up 3-1. And I remember the Capitals were up in game, what would that be, 5. We're about to finish the Rangers, and I was so excited because my season was going to be over. And I was so tired, and I was so worn out, and I was like, okay, my hockey season's over, and I'll get a little break here. And then they came back and won the series in 7 games and went to the conference final. I got to do the conference final, and I got to the end of the conference final, and I was all set to do the Stanley Cup final if they had won Game 7. And the Tampa Bay Lightning beat the Rangers 2-0 in Game 7. I remember being ecstatic. I remember just like skipping out of MSG to the PATH train, going, "Man, my season's over. My season's over. I can't. I get a break." Yeah. And then I never got to cover the conference finals or the playoff. Wow. I've covered one playoff game since, and it's like it's so fleeting sometimes how you can be in it and then you can be out of it. And I got the job with the NHL. Everybody asked me how I got this job with the NHL. I interviewed actually. I don't even know how I got connected with somebody, but a buddy from Sacred Heart actually connected me with an editor over there at opening. Okay. And so I went down for an interview in Midtown in the NHL office, up on the 15th floor, the old 1185 6th Avenue. And it was terrible. I was terrible. I was so bad. And it was 2012. I was like 27 years old. And I remember I had a typo in my resume. And I remember I had, I was fumbling over everything. I was like, but, I opened the door. It opened the door. And so I stayed in touch with the people over there. They were staying in touch with me. I grew, obviously, started covering the NHL for other bigger outlets. I proved that I wasn't just some guy that was forgettable. And when they added some jobs in 2016, they called me. They were like, "Hey, do you want to come over and interview for it?" I was like, "Yeah." And it was pretty short order, and it was not a great fit, frankly. It was one of those things where, I'm grateful for the time I had there. Great, I wouldn't have gotten the book published if not for my time at the NHL. There were some things we didn't see eye to eye on, and it wasn't a great fit for, but it's funny when you get your dream job, and then it's not you realize it's not the dream. It's not exactly what you want to do.
We've spoken about that at length on this podcast.
Yeah. So like it's wild how life continues to go on when you're not there anymore. So I think it's I'm grateful for the time that I got there. It was really an exercise in perseverance to land the job, because I had 3 interviews over there before I got the job, and but I got a lot out of it. I got consistent pay. The benefits were terrific. I got healthcare and pension and 401k and all the retirement stuff is taken care of, but it was not the best fit, and frankly, I'd be grateful I'm not there right now to some degree.
You talk about lesson in perseverance. Earlier, I got to sneak in a little bit while you were speaking, and you talked about how it took 10 years to write your book.
Yep.
That is, to me, is also a lesson in perseverance.
For sure.
I would love to know, because obviously with projects like this, when you take it on, you have a vision at first.
Yeah.
Things, try and knock you off that course, but you keep it going.
Yeah.
I would love to know what kept you going throughout all those years. That's a very long time to commit.
Yeah, it is. It was one of those things that, and the film is this to some degree too, is that I've had a lot of, I could rattle off my resume, and it's got a lot of really impressive places, the New York Times and Bleacher Report, and I still string for the Associated Press, and covering the NBA mostly now at this point. But I never have felt satisfied. So it was, and the book for me was always this opportunity to do better and bigger and greater, and I never sort of lost sight of it, even though because so I started in 2011 with the book and yeah, again, the reason the book took so long is, well, there's a lot of reasons. This is that the story evolved, obviously,
of course, yeah.
And what I always say, and what is true, is that I started with a completely blank slate.
Okay.
Is I was not a Whalers fan. I was not, I was a Devils fan in New Jersey, but and sort of tangentially aware of the Whalers history, and I really felt I needed this book to be for people who lived the story and people who didn't live the story. Like, it needed to be authentic. Because if I had, if it had taken 3 years to write it, or 4 years, whatever, it would have been terrible. No one would have read it, and it wouldn't have gotten published, because the story was not complete, first off, and it was not good. There was a lot more I needed to talk to all sorts of sources. I needed to talk to, because I needed to get the whole story, because I didn't know the whole story. I could research it to a point, but I didn't know it. And so it took me, and then it was supposed to come out in 2020, and the pandemic caused all these supply chain issues. It got bumped back a year. So it's 10 years is a nice round number. I mean, the book, we agreed to the deal in 2018.
Okay.
So it was 7 years at that point, which is still a long time.
Yeah.
And they wanted it to come out in 2019, and I was like, I don't think I could have it done properly by then. So I pushed it back, and then it got pushed back another year. So, but it was always this thing that I did it at my own pace. It was not something that I locked myself in a room for 2 months and wrote. It was it was just something that I had when I had spare time. And you guys know in media, there's not much spare time. It's just not. Yeah. And so, it took what it took, and I'm happy with the way it came out. Looking back at it, the film's going to be much better for a lot of reasons. Mainly because the Whalers story the book was. Buy the book. Don't get me wrong. Buy the book. Let me look at the camera. Buy the book.
Buy the book. Amazon.
Yeah, but it was. I had the limitations of my own self at that point, and I think the cool part about the film is the fact that there's a group. Like, this is a group of people. It's not all, I said this in the event, it's not all about me. It's not limited by myself. It's what others around me can do. And what, obviously I'm sort of steering the ship to some degree, but I have some help, and I have some, the book was definitely an exercise in what I could do. And the film is about what we can do and how we're going to put this together. And I'm blown away with what I've learned from this film process, because, I thought I knew the story of the team, and I do, but there's so much more that I don't know. And I think that's the kind of the cool part of, and that's really the itch that gets scratched for me, is like, it sounds so nerdy, but I'm on this quest to learn things and then know things and get backstories and, and really, frankly, to be an interesting person, to try and know things so that, I talk to people, I could be like, well, I remember this and this and this and this. And again, I just, I wrote for the Times, but I was never full-time. I was never a staffer.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote for the NHL, but I was working in an office 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I do some other things. I string basketball for the AP, but again, it's part-time, it's freelance. There's never been that moment where I've felt, this is it. This is the job. This is the role. This is what I've sought out my whole life. And I think that's where all these other projects come into play, because it's not, the book was essentially was going to be a means to getting to that place. And then at some point I was like, well, I can just do this.
Yeah.
I don't have to be confined to that role. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to do, go be a columnist, go cover the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It's still the dream.
Yeah.
But like, why not try to write a book? Why not try to make a film? Why not try to, keep your options open and see where all these things take you? Because it all begets more. One story, you learn one story, you get to hear a second story. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, where do we want to go with that?
Yeah.
Well, then there's another story. It's like, oh, okay, there's that.
Yeah.
And they're all sort of intertwined, but then you start looking at things a little differently. You say, well, there's something there. It's not just, it's not just, oh, that's cool, and then forget it. It's like, well, what if we can explore that? Can we do something with that? And I think I've been fortunate, thankfully, this place has surrounded me with great people. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here to bash Sacred Heart, but like, there's definitely another level this place could get to in terms of, talent and developing talent and in terms of, we're getting these great people in here in this program, and they're doing great things. And we just need more. We just need more curious people, more smart, thoughtful, considerate people who are, who have their dreams set on the sky instead of, in the trees or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, but the people that we've worked with have been phenomenal, and the equipment's great, and the studio's, and we're doing a lot of work here at Sacred Heart in the Martiri building. So it's I can't thank them enough for the people and the resources they've given us.
Yeah, that's dope. And then I'm a business guy, so
Yeah.
tell me about how you got like the publishing deal and things like that, and then how did the movie come about too? Like, and how is that picked up by somebody?
So the movie, the film's going to be on SNY
Okay,
in New York, and potentially SNY is committed to it. It's a matter of could be NBC Sports. I don't want to say too much.
Can you get it on Netflix?
Well, we're working on it. We're
All
trying.
right.
We had a meeting 2 years ago with the 30 for 30 people. And it was one of those moments of like, this is, it was one of those things that looking back on it, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Like to be it was only a Zoom, but like we were in a group with a bunch of people, and it's like, okay, this is something to remember, even if they passed, unfortunately. But, so the book deal was, again, it was just having it done. It was having proof of concept, really.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, again, it's this thing that came by accident. I got an email working for the NHL, and I got an email pitch for a book about Emile Francis, who was working for the Whalers. It was a book about Emile Francis's New York Rangers. He was the coach and GM of the Rangers. And so I got a pitch from a publisher, Skyhorse Publishing. And I responded to it. I was like, we don't review books. But do you take submissions?
Yeah.
And they said, okay, so, we'll take submissions. And so I I sent them my materials and they sat on them for like 3 months. And I just like, okay, so, I guess I'm never going to hear back from these guys. I guess it was terrible. And apparently the guy who was trying to buy the book worked really hard, but couldn't get it past the over the finish line with his bosses or whatever. But he said, I have a contact over at Globe Pequot, or Lions Press is the publisher. He said they might be interested in it. And so he sent my stuff to the contact over there, and he sat on it for like 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then I got a message on LinkedIn from a book buyer from Lions on LinkedIn, just completely out of the blue, like, hey, we buy books. Are you interested do you have anything to sell us? And I was like, yeah, I actually do, but I think you already have my stuff. Yeah. And so in that way, it was very quick because like I had chapters, I had a lot of the thing written. They had seen it. They saw the outline. They trusted me. They said, okay, have it done by this date, sign your name, and we own the book. And then it's really an exercise in perseverance where with the film, because we had the meeting with ESPN, they passed. We've been trying to find other distributors, and it was just, we reached out. I became aware of it. I mean, I know SNY, obviously everybody knows SNY, but SNY, I realized SNY has this Connecticut sort of, as a uniquely Connecticut, coverage area where like they do the Yukon stuff. They do and I was like, we should reach out to them and like just see what they, kick their tires, because my partner Tal Pinchevsky, who's working on the film with me, he mentioned going the RSN route because once ESPN passed, we were like, okay, where do we go from here? And he got he said, hey, maybe we should try some RSNs. We tried Bally in Carolina. They were not quite interested. They're not interested. It's just that they weren't. Long story. So we went to SNY, and the SNY, it just so happened that SNY's decision makers are 2 guys from Connecticut, and one's from Southington. One actually left ESPN to do original content for SNY. Some of the documentaries. They did the Keith Hernandez doc a few years ago, and they did a couple other things. And he said, all I've ever wanted to do in my life is a Whalers documentary, and no one's and no one would give him the green light to do it. So we brought this project to him, and he was like, I'm in. Just get it to us whenever you can. And and so that was the original content guy, and their content guy they've been really great partners. They don't press us too much. They don't, they read the book and they were like, oh man, it was really great. I learned some new things, but they're a good partner. We want to get it broader for sure. And they've offered potentially to partner us up with some broader distribution in the NBC sphere. We'll see. But really, it's just it's a lot of it's tireless work that doesn't feel tireless. Mm-hmm. It's just like reaching out to people and like trying to get people to know who you are, and if they're interested, that's great. If they're not, no hard feelings. It's sort of how this industry is. Definitely. And it's gone this far.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, how did you discover, like, obviously you probably knew about the Whalers, but like what made you want to do that and write the book about the Whalers, and like this history, like what intrigued you about the Whalers?
Well, for starters, it hadn't been done before. Yeah. So it was, I always tell the story that there had been a book that came out about the Whalers, but it came out in 1987. Okay. And so a lot had changed between when I started from 1987, the team had moved. But there's a lot of things. There's the Devils were rumored to go to Nashville, and then they didn't because they won the Cup in '95. Mm-hmm. And then they, then I saw the Whalers leave, mm-hmm. and what happened? I knew how I was going to feel if the Devils left. Yeah. And then, well, how did those people feel? So there was some of that, and then there was this. I was in Connecticut. I was here at Sacred Heart. I lived in Trumbull. Over across the Merritt, barely I could walk to here, and I was here when the Hurricanes won the Stanley Cup in 2006, and I just remember being like, "Wow, that team was here." Yeah. And then now so there was that, and then I got the job in Fairfield, and I there was this brand revival with the Whalers, and it was stunning. Like I would go to the Trumbull Mall and I'd be like, there would be the sporting goods store. There's this huge display of Whalers stuff, or like I would be covering a high school hockey game, and the players would come out for interviews wearing Whaler hoodies, and I was like, these kids were toddlers when the team moved. Like, what do they know about this? So there was
I think it got voted like best logo ever.
And the merchandise has only gotten more popular. It was 11th in the NHL a decade ago, and it's like, depending on who you talk, top 10 or top 5 in terms of logo.
Overactive teams. That's crazy.
And like they don't exist. They don't exist. They haven't. So but yeah, and I think it's great. I mean, I brought this. This was sent to me from Peter Good, the logo designer, who has since passed. He died. He came in and he did an interview here in summer of 2022, and him and his wife came over, and we talked about the logo and how it came together. And they were great, such great people, gracious people with their time. They sent me a bunch of Whalers stuff, and really just terrific. But the logo is phenomenal. Just the colors were so unique and just phenomenal. And the logo is terrific. And it's just
and I believe Hartford Athletic, the soccer team, I think they designed their stuff or used the colors.
Well, the Argos took the colors too. And then we just were talking to some people earlier about it's got to be blue and green if you're in Hartford. You can't, because the Hartford Wolfpack have the blue and red, and the Rangers colors, and the fans up there revolt. Even though that's UConn, like it's the same colors as UConn, but they revolt because it's the Rangers. So.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, throughout your career, you have learned many lessons. What lessons would you pass on now to the next generation of students who may be listening to this?
Man, this industry's tough. Is the first thing. It is, and it only seems to be getting tougher.
I was gonna say, like, too, with AI and stuff, the writing, and then even the Sports Illustrated now going under.
Well, LA Times as well.
The LA Times, a bunch of layoffs, Washington Post. It's hard, honestly, as a writer. I still write for the Game Day, as a gambling marketing website with.
It's all about betting now.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, I think. It's good. It does the job. It's a fun environment with some fun young people, and it keeps me young, focused on some things. You learn some things about doing. I mean, it was an industry that didn't exist a decade ago, which is hard to find in sports media. Like I always say this, and but like my family members told me when I got out of college that your job won't exist in 10 years. And like, you better go work in, not Wall Street, but like go work in a corporation, go be a marketing person. I mean, ironically, that's where I turned up anyway, but my writing got me there. But, really, you have to love it. I tell people that all the time. You have to love it. Otherwise you're not going to, you won't do what it takes. And like I said, I always talk about my sports career as a calling, as something that, like, I've been a fan of sports since I was still 5 years old, as long as I can remember. And like I said, I grew up watching SportsCenter every morning while other kids were watching cartoons. And we live for games, live for big events. I can't miss, can't miss conference final Sunday in this NFL. Can't, I watch 150 Yankee games a year because I'm still a huge Yankee fan. And you need to love it. You can't fake your way through this stuff, especially in a sport like hockey, where there's so many diehards, there's so many passionate people who are like, "Oh, can you believe that?" And you're just, if you're not into it, you're just not into it. But you got to love doing it, and you got to, but I just told this actually to someone, to Molly Jacob. I give her a shout out. She did a great job at our event, and carve your own path. Don't be afraid to carve your own path, because and stay and be open to some of these things. Because I see people who are like, and God, honestly, that's part of people's paths, is like, okay, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I won't do this. But I never thought I could write a book. I never thought, like, I tell people this, I wouldn't have said I could write for the New York Times. Like, I was not a dream. Everybody's career dream is like, I want to write for the New York Times. But byline, I did it for 3.5 years. And it was never a childhood dream of mine, because I never thought I could do it. I never would have believed I could do it. And I did. I say this with the film, I had friends who were, their little digital palm camcorders, doing nature short videos, 8 minutes or whatever of the butterflies or the landscapes. And I was laughing at them because I still don't know the tech side of it.
Yeah.
But, my partner Tal, he approached me to do the film about 4 years ago. And again, my career was sort of at a crossroads again, where I was like, is this something I could do? And I love the documentaries. I live for, like the ESPN one, the 30 for 30s and the HBO ones. I just watched the Jeremy Lin one from last year on HBO. It was really good.
I didn't see that one.
And I watched. I'll plug that later. But I love them because I love what I get out of them, and I love that how popular they become and what has happened to them. I said this. That if you watch a documentary 20 years ago, you'd fall asleep. You'd fall asleep watching documentaries, and now they're super entertaining. They're super engaging. There's lots of elements, and it's not that they weren't. They just must have been not. The sports ones have just taken off. So then that's like the video book. So let's seek this out, and the process has been long and it's been tricky, but it's something that that hasn't felt long.
Yeah.
When you read that's the one thing the benefit of writing taking 10 years to write a book is that everything else you do will feel short. Like this has been almost 3.5 years to get this film to where we are. And it's like, well, it's still like 35% of the book. So.
Even like the Netflix Untold series.
So
unbelievable. I got to ask you about what did you think about the Dan Barry Trashers one?
Awesome. It was so good. Phil Jubileo was in it. I recognized him. Like, I know that guy. That story is there's so many things about that story I can't believe. Mike Rupp just randomly appears in it I remember him playing again for the Devils and in the NHL on NHL Network now. And it just is wild. My favorite, actually, I think my favorite Netflix. Well, the Manti Te'o one I think is my favorite, but the Trashers one was really good too, and the Manziel one was pretty good. I just wish it was a little bit longer.
Yes,
100%. I think it was just too new still. Like maybe. I think they needed to wait a couple more years. Yeah,
there's definitely something to that.
And like I felt like I just knew too much about it. Like it wasn't like good to me because I just knew about all this stuff. Yeah, but it was so good. But like I knew, but. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Like it's why it's also funny to be like to how your brain evolves with some of these things because now I'm watching it like when the my favorite one the one that really turned me on to the 30 for 30s was the SMU one. Was the SMU football one? Pony Express. Pony Express. And I just because I remember that story being so wild. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my god, oh my goodness. Yeah. And then it felt like there have been others that I will continuously rewatch, like the Requiem for the Big East is another one that hits me about the Big East college basketball. But I became a critic because I started watching them. I'm like, where the first time I was watching for the entertainment value in the story, I was like, well, this one could have been this, and this one could have done this, and this one was good, but it could have done that. And it's like, it sound like a.
And now I'm sure you're watching them different because you're making a film.
So. Well, that too, yeah. I was just actually was going to plug this, but my partner Tal Pinchevsky was in a documentary actually about the history of the Czech, the 1998 Czech ice hockey team, the Olympic team that won gold medal. Okay. And I was watching it the other night, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And I was like, but the background is dark, and and this guy's face is very like. Up against the frame, and I was like, "But the story is incredible." And I was talking to Andrew Miller before I came on in here, and it was just like, and he's telling me all these things to be mindful of in terms of framing shots, and I was like, "Yep, you're right." I'm still the student learning from the chair of the department, so it's. Even almost 20 years later.
Yeah, for sure. Another question, like, what about the Whalers players? Like, has there been anyone that like you haven't been able to contact that you wanted to contact? Like, how many players have you interviewed
for the film or for the book or for either? Just both. Yeah. We've got dozens, and they're
fans too. Have you interviewed?
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I built a lot of relationships with fans. Yeah. And booster club members.
Because even when I was tweeting about it, I saw like there's a bunch of fan pages. Yeah. Still, like I'm like, that's crazy.
I went to a Hurricanes game last year with a guy who runs a Hartford Whalers Twitter account. So we knew we got to know each other from running the Hartford Whalers. Crazy. Yeah. So the cool thing about it, I don't know how far broadly we'll be distributed with this, but so I don't want to ruffle too much. But Chris Pronger was the only guy that I haven't gotten a hold of that I would have loved to, and it's weird because he was working for the Florida Panthers when I reached out to him, and I know their PR people pretty well. They've been pretty helpful through the years, and they were like, "Okay, Chris Pronger is going to call you today," and I was like, "It didn't happen." Like, okay. So I followed up and I was like, sorry, he was supposed to call you today. He's going to call you tomorrow for sure. And he just never did. And it's just we're trying to get him for the film.
So we got to get him then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're manifesting here.
Yeah. We're speaking this into existence. Yeah. But that's, I think, the really cool thing about this story in general is just the reception from the former players. Yeah. There are guys who could have viewed Hartford as a through point. It's like the city between New York and Boston. Yeah. And the people who some of them are enormous names at this point in hockey. Ron Francis and Joel Quenneville and Kevin Dineen and we spoke with Dean Evison for the film, who was the coach of the Wild for a while, and Ryder Ferraro was on ESPN, and just rattle the names off of these guys who are major players in the NHL. Yeah. And you bring up the Whalers, and it's like, I'll talk to you. And I tell this story, we booked Dean Evison, was the coach of the Minnesota Wild. And the PR guy said, we'll give you 30 minutes because it's the start of training camp. And he gets in and sits down and he says, I just had to break some hearts because he had to cut some guys off the roster. They didn't make the team, got sent back to the American League. And we get through 50 minutes talking to him about the Whalers. And he starts asking us questions because, he wants to know what we've learned, and we want, what do you think about this? And it's like, and then he got fired by the Wild, halfway through, like in December. And I called him. Someone gave me his phone number. I called him. He's like, "Oh man, it was great hearing from you, and be in touch. We want to get back in touch." He's like, "I'll let you my archive, but I gotta get hired by a new team." Yeah. So, and it's all in storage, and I can't get it out of storage until I get a new job. And I was like, okay, so we're rooting for you to get a new job as soon as possible. But it's really cool how these guys, again, huge names and huge people in hockey, and they're just like, I love Hartford. My kids, Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, Joel Quenneville met their wives in Hartford. Wow. They had kids in Hartford. Ron Francis got traded from Hartford to Pittsburgh a week after his daughter was born. Wow. And there was always this rumor he asked for a trade. He's like, why would I ask for a trade? I'm having a family here. Yeah. And it's like, so it's and they just love talking about their time there because it's just such a unique place in the history of sports, not just hockey. I think that's the cool thing too, is it bigger than hockey because Hartford, Connecticut, professional sports. Yeah. Like UConn, fine, whatever. That's you could get a major player in college sports from any small rinky-dink town. But Wayne Gretzky played in Hartford. Mario Lemieux played in Hartford. Ron Francis was a member of the Hartford Whalers. Is fourth all time in points. Yeah. And he can't. And we just booked him to be in the film. He's like, I love Hartford. I can't talk enough about it.
Yeah, so that's why I can't wait to see the film because I think it's going to blow up like the Trashers one did.
Yeah, I hope. I hope so. That's the goal. I mean, if not, we'll do something else that'll.
I'm telling you, just got to be on Netflix.
that's you got a contact? Can you send me?
I do.
He says you can just walk in the building.
I got a contact.
Hello, Mr. Netflix. Can I call you? I have this idea for you.
I got some contacts on Netflix.
Okay, we'll talk off air.
Pat, we can keep you here all day talking about this, but we appreciate your time. Awesome. One last bit of advice that you would leave for students here at Sacred Heart.
Just do it. Do what makes you happy. And honestly, man, it's this business is hard. The media business is hard. It's not lucrative by any means. It can be if you make the right connections, if you chart the right path. But I know a lot of people who are miserable, but well paid.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, in some cases, some days I would trade with them, honestly.
Yeah.
But most days, when you're the thing, there's always this game that stands out to me. It was on Mother's Day in 2014. It's a Martin St. Louis Mother's Day game, and I remember just feeling tired and worn out. I gone to brunch with my mom. I worked a 6 to 2 on Saturday the night before. I went to Princeton, New Jersey to have brunch with my mom on Mother's Day, and I was burnt out. I was tired. I was exhausted. I was like dreading going to the Garden to cover the Rangers that night. They could have been eliminated. And I walked into the building, and Marty St. Louis scores this goal like a month after his mom died. On Mother's Day, the first goal of the game, the Rangers, and the building explodes. Yeah. And the bridge is shaking where the press box is on the bridge. It's
high up there.
Yeah. And it starts shaking. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm back. Like, I'm not, all that burnout, all that, it's like, it got me. It's I'm engaged in this. And it's moments like that you live for.
Yeah.
It's moments like we did 3 interviews downstairs, or we did, went to Connecticut Ice to do interviews, and we went to an interview. I did like 7 interviews over the course of a 4-day period of time, which sounds like a lot, and it is. Yeah. But it's like these are the moments that make all that mundane, all that horrible paycheck, all that sleepless nights about where's my future, how's my future. It's what makes it all worth doing. Definitely. And sometimes it'll take a lot to get to that place, but and I still don't feel like I got there. But there's been enough moments where it's like, okay, this is right, this is good, and this is enjoyable enough that I can keep doing it for another day.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
And if people want to find your book, where can they find it?
They can find it on Amazon. I always tell people to go to Amazon because that's where we buy everything. Is on Amazon, right?
They got day shipping now, like same day shipping.
Yeah,
1 day shipping. It's crazy.
We were looking at SD cards because we were trying to figure out and
they're selling cars now too.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah. Yeah, they just started.
Actually, let me not.
Tell me they're not the automatic driver ones either.
I have no idea.
Definitely don't do that.
What a thrill. This was awesome, guys.
Yeah, thank you. This has been another episode of What You Doing. We will see y'all next time.